Hi, everyone. This is Bob Dietrich with another edition of the ADHD Toolbox. And today we're going to be talking specifically around college and what's the transition like for someone with ADHD moving from high school to college. And that's a difficult transition. If you have little kids, eventually you'll have to deal with this. If you have teenagers, you're just about to deal with it. And certainly you can share this with your friends who have kids that might want to take a look at this. And also, and this is just not just for ADHD, but certainly, especially for people with ADHD. So let's check it out. And today we have Juli. How do you pronounce your last name? Because I mess up everybody's name in the program.
It's actually easier than it looks. Shulem.
Shulem. Okay,
Shulem.
good.
Uh-huh.
Juli Shulem. And Juli, you're now you're a coach, but you're also an MS, a CPC, and a PCC. I was going to go into my rap, but what are those acronyms for at the end of your name?
Well, the MS is a Master of Science. I have a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology.
Sure.
The CPC is Certified Professional Coach through the International Coaching Academy, and PCC, Professional Certified Coach through the International Coaching Federation. It's just a bunch of letters.
Awesome. All right.
It just says I've done my time.
Because we want to know your background and where we're coming from here. So also you were an efficiency specialist in 1984 with a focus on those with more difficult organizing and time management challenges. What is an efficiency specialist?
Well, I was actually a professional organizer, and I specialized in efficiency for businesses primarily. So I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, and companies so that they were more efficient and effective in their work, basically more productive. So that's what it kind of boils down to.
Couple And you've been doing this for quite a while. It looks like almost, since 80.
Don't say, shh, don't say.
Sorry.
Long time.
Couple of years. And how did you get into ADHD coaching? That must be an interesting story.
It actually is kind of interesting. It started when I was doing work mostly as an organizer, and I was going into various businesses, and I had a whole lot of clients. And in 1 year alone, about 17 or 18 years ago, in 1 year, every single one of my clients told me that they had ADHD, which explained so much because I was having to create and invent basically different kinds of systems that would work for the brains of the people that I was working with.
Right.
And it turned out that, I was creating these systems, and then the next person said, oh, by the way, I have ADHD. I'm like, okay, I got something for this, So I kept developing ways in order to help those with ADHD. And I realized, wow, there's a lot of adults with ADHD that don't have the kind of support that they need. And I started getting people that wanted my help because I understood the ADHD component. And so I actually started really studying it, mastering it, because this was a need. And at that time also, my son had been diagnosed, so we knew he had ADHD, his father, his grandmother, my sister, my father. I mean, it's all over my world. So I'm very familiar with it. And it made complete sense that I was working with so many people that had ADHD, because the majority of entrepreneurs about 35%, I think the last statistics were, of entrepreneurs have ADHD, which kind of makes sense in a way. So since that was my market, those are the people I worked with, it made sense that the majority of them who were disorganized, needed time management help, needed efficiency help, and all this, that they also had ADHD or suspected it. So many of them were actually diagnosed, but some were just like, I think I have it, I'm not sure. So I was like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to fix whatever's going on anyway. So it's all fine.
That's fantastic. So ADHD, organization, those are two things you've kind of brought together. We're going to talk about the college transition from high school in a minute, but you also work with a lot of different kinds of people. What is your specialty? Like who do you really tend to focus on when you work with people?
Well, for one, I focus on adults because there's a lot of help for children.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that because I had one who needed help. So I found it was very easy to get help as a child, but very more difficult for adults. So I work specifically with adults, and I'd say if you were to look at the demographics of the people that I tend to spend my time helping, it's entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives, leaders in corporations,
Mhm.
and college students, which is kind of an interesting diversity. But what's really neat and what I love working, why I love working with college students is they're at a major transition point in their life,
Right.
and I am able to affect how the rest of their life is going to be, and help make sure that they're going to be able to be successful in their career and in their adulthood, where I'm getting clients in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are struggling. And they're always saying, oh my gosh, I wish I had known about you when I was younger, when I was in college. I wouldn't be in this situation. And I wish I'd learned these skills when I was younger. I said, well, if I can help those that are younger, this will be great, because then they won't be that adult in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that are stressed and dealing with so much of this overwhelm. So it's kind of, I have a passion for working with students. They're just, I really get excited about being able to help them, because they're at this place where they're already in this mode of learning and wanting to grasp new concepts and ideas. So being able to help them to do that at this juncture of their life, it works so well. It's just so great, because I get to see such a huge shift in how they function. And yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
exciting.
Yeah. Well, you can really hear the passion in your voice. And so, and I know parents and students appreciate somebody who's passionate about where they are and helping them. So that's awesome. And I love that. You just mentioned a stat that I want to highlight. It was 35% now is that 35% of entrepreneurs have ADHD?
That's the statistic I had
Mhm.
from several years ago. I have no idea if it's changed or anything,
I wonder
but
what percentage of adults who have ADHD are entrepreneurs, turning that stat a little bit.
yeah, I don't know.
We'll have to look that
Someone will have to find that out.
I will be looking that up and report back to our viewers.
Awesome. Okay, good.
Let's talk about the transition with college, because,
Mhm.
we know the transition's difficult. If you're a parent or you're an adult, raising a child, it's different now, right? We all know that too. So in what ways is college different than high school now?
The main way that I'm seeing that students are struggling because of the difference is the fact that they're going from a very structured situation.
Uh,
And school is from 8 to 3 or so, Monday through Friday. They go from class to class. They know where they're going. They know where they're supposed to be. Everything's pretty regimented.
mhm,
And then here's college. Bam, nothing is normal. There is no structure.
mhm,
Everything is different. There's no set, day schedule, and they have, they got to go to their classes. They're going to their lectures, if you will,
mhm,
but there's no set time where, okay, you're here and you're doing this from these hours, and that's your day. They have to create their day. They have to create their structure. And when they've never had that opportunity, then that's very, very difficult. So it's knowing how to actually plan, their lives. And there's also so much they need to know and be an advocate for themselves, because they're getting into an environment where they can't just call mom and dad and, hey, I don't know what to do here. You got to help me. Mom and dad can't just jump in, because there's all kinds of rules and laws there. And I found this out when even my own son, who at 16, he was attending college, taking some courses. And I was trying to help, make sure that things were going okay, because he also has ADHD. And, and he was young, and even though he was underage, he was still a minor. They said, yeah, so we can't actually tell you anything, because there's a law about that. He was FERPA. And they said, we can't actually do that. I said, but he's a minor. And they go, yeah, that doesn't matter. It's college. It's the way it is. So helping a student to be able to advocate for themselves and be able to get to their teacher's office hours and know that there are deadlines that they have to be aware of. You may need to drop a class or withdraw, and you need to know when it's time to register for classes. These things, they're posted for you you might get an email about them, but you have to actually plan and schedule to do them and know where and when. And no one's going to sit there and hold your hand through all this as a student. You have to do it yourself. So there's that component. There's also the whole self-care component. Okay, all of a sudden, yeah, you have to get your food, you have to do your laundry, you have to keep your place clean. There's no one there to help you with this. You have to know how to do these things yourself. Yeah. I've had students where they're on their way to a test. They go, "Oh my goodness, I need a Scantron, or I need a blue book." You're like, yeah, you need to plan ahead for these things. They're not provided for you. The school's not going to just hand stuff over and say, "Oh, here, now that you're having your test, here's what you need." You need to know where you're going for your exams. If you've got ADHD and you are allowed and expecting accommodations, you need to get to the student services office, whatever that may be called. They're different, sometimes disability students, sometimes, special services, whatever it is. But you need to get to that office, right, and get your accommodations well before exams.
Right.
Because it takes them a couple of weeks to get a proctor. And a lot of times students don't even realize, you're going to have an exam perhaps in a different room, in a different time, maybe, with different people, maybe by yourself. It depends upon what your needs are. But, they can't hire someone to come in and proctor that exam unless they have proper notice. And I've had students where, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to do this, and I didn't get signed up and done it." And I'm like, "Okay, we're fast pedaling," and I'm calling the offices, "Hey, we need to push this through." But these things all need to be addressed as soon as someone gets into their first year of college. So there's so many changes. There's so many things that have to be made, taken into account, and the student has to be made aware of. And that's there. I think the lack of structure is probably the most difficult hurdle to overcome for most of the students that I work with, because they have no experience in really managing their lives fully.
Yeah. And, if you're a high school student, your parents are doing a lot of stuff for you. Like you said, they're doing your clothes. You're probably not cleaning your room.
Right.
They make your lunch for you, or they give you money for lunch. They wake you up, kick you out of bed, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
They may even drop you off at school.
Right.
They're making sure that you're staying on your medicine regimen if you're on medication. There's so much going on. They help filter your friends. They make sure that you come home early at night, or on time, go to bed on time, be ready. And then when you get to school, everything's given to you, right? The testing material, the textbooks, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And you barely even need to see a counselor. And when you do, it's
very much so. I mean, even to the point where, in high school, you'll get notice. You've got an exam coming up, or you've got a project or a paper due, and we're going to break down the steps for you. First, you're going to write the outline, then you're going to do this, then and the teacher will kind of guide you through that process. That doesn't always happen in college. Sometimes it does, but not always. Sometimes, you get a syllabus, and that syllabus basically says, this is what your term is like. This is what you need to read. These are when your tests are. This is when your project is due. By the way, it's due on this day at this time. We may not tell you about it. You may just have to do it, and turn it in. But the thing is, what you can do, which a lot of students are very hesitant to do, is go to the professor's office hours. That's one of the key things that I try to get every one of my students to do. Go to the office hours. Get to know the professor. Otherwise, you are just a number in their system. Yep. If they don't know you, they can't help you. They need to know that you need help. Yep. And even if you just go in to ask a quick question about whatever lecture was about, just to get clarification, you want to do it. You want to do it fast. You want to do it soon, because one of the other things that students are also often hung up with is the fact that a term in college can go very, very quickly. There are, it's either a semester system or a quarter system. If you're in the UC system, for example, that's a quarter system. That's a 10-week term. That goes mighty fast. And I always tell students, we're preparing for finals from day one.
Right.
because you want to have all your notes in order and everything organized so that when it comes time to take an exam, it's a review and not a revelation. You don't want to just be learning material right before your finals. You want to say, oh yeah, I got that. I know this stuff. We've done this before. The other thing that a lot of students don't put into their planning and their schedule is the amount of time it takes for reading and reviewing. And this is something that is so important because you can really mess up by not giving yourself enough time to do those two tasks. Reviewing and going over notes repeatedly, repetition is the main thing that's going to help a student be able to remember material to be able to put down on an exam. If they're not repeating and learning the material and going over it frequently enough, they will end up not necessarily having the memory, having it in their memory bank to draw from. And you need time to go over material over and over again. And many students just don't put the time into it. This is a cool little thing, which I'll tell you that I have my students do. Many of the times, so this is when I'm starting with a student, many times I'll say, okay, do you know how many hours you should be studying? And I've had students say, oh, like maybe 10 or 12 a week. And maybe that worked in high school, but I tell them, well, however many units you're carrying. So let's say they've got 12 units at that, in that term, in a quarter, that could be realistic. And I said, you want to multiply that by 3. So that'd be 36. That's how many hours a week you should have scheduled to study. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, wait, that's so much. That's so much. I go, well, think about it. You're not in class that much. A lecture is an hour and a quarter, maybe. Maybe a lab will be longer, but you're doing a lot of the work in the lab. So that doesn't require generally as much studying per se, but that's only 1 unit typically. So I help them look at it. I said, you know what? You have to look at college as a job. Your job starts at 8 in the morning and it's going to go to around 6 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday. If you've got just 12 or 14 hours of classes, you've got a lot of time for those 36 hours of study time. Because when you look at it, the classes are kind of like the meetings. Those are the meetings you would have at a job. The rest of the time you're doing the work the meeting was about. That's how you have to kind of think of it. So I try to shift the mindset so that the students can see, oh, this is my job. And the cool thing about doing it that way is they get acclimated to a normal work schedule. So when they get out of school, going to work at 8 o'clock is not a problem. They're already used to working from 8 to 6 or whatever it is. And yeah, there might be work they need to do in the evenings after dinner or something. But if they've really put a lot of effort and time into that day and they've done the things they need to do, then it's really not as big of a deal. And then they still have the weekends. And weekends are great for, getting a big project done or working on studying for an exam that might be that following week. So they've got this bonus time that they can utilize. So it's really, really doable. And I sit and work with students on their calendar until we're blue in the face sometimes, because that's the key. That's one of the major strategies is managing time, being organized, keeping and updating your calendar, and keeping and updating your homework task list so that you know exactly what you need to do, when all the due dates are, how long it's going to take you. And I have a whole process of how I help them with that so that they're actually prepared and there's no surprises. The worst thing you want to find out is you're at the end of the term and you forgot to do a project. And then you have to take an incomplete and then you have to do it again or do it in the next term and turn it in and then you get your grade. But that's not pleasant because you don't have time for that. You got another whole term of classes to deal with. So, these are all the things that I help a student to do. And these are the things they need to understand and be able to master. And once they get it, it's so much easier. and college is fun, and college should be fun. And I make sure that they do schedule fun. So it's not just all about study, study, study. It's like, no, you need to have your chill time. You need to be, having social time. This is when your life is, your life is changing, and you're getting to know who you are. This is where a student finds themselves.
Yeah. And speaking of scheduling, it's like, I don't remember scheduling anything when I was in college. Right? I mean, literally, it's like it was like, okay, it's dark, it's time to study. And I was at class. I don't even remember what I did in between. But scheduling is a great idea. And sounds like it's one of the tools that you use to keep them on schedule, and your clients on schedule, and help them get through it faster. And also, like you said, acclimate them to the work schedule that they'll be doing, whether they're working for themselves or not.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's occurring to me that there must be some challenges with college, and one of the things that I'm thinking of is you've got some children, teenagers going into college that are going to go into like a local college. So they're going to still be at home, right? They're still relying a lot on the parents, which is great. They can get that support. And other kids are going away to college. Do you have any recommendations on that, or is that decision already made by the time people start working with you, or what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, they're already enrolled by the time they get to me. What's really great, the best time to actually engage a coach for a student before college is about a month before the term actually begins. So in the summer, I like to get students set up, teach them how to use their calendar, teach them how to use a task management system, and help them to learn some of the self-care skills. Even if they're living at home, by this time, they should be doing their own laundry. They should be taking care of cooking for themselves. They need to learn how to shop. They need to learn how to budget their money. They need to learn how to keep their room clean. I've had a student where they've been literally thrown out of a dorm unit with other students because they were so messy and disorganized, no one wanted to live with them. Now, granted, it's kind of a known thing that college students aren't the tidiest, and they're going to have a lot of stuff around. But the thing is, some are. And if you're in a dorm room with someone who's real, really, really neat, and you're really, really not, you may not have a bunkmate, a roommate in the future. Because people eventually start getting to the point where they want things to be organized and clean and tidy, because then they can find their things, and you don't want your stuff commingling with someone else's, and you don't want dirty laundry out all day, for days on end, stinking up the room. So it's actually something that I help students to learn how to do. Is there's ways of becoming organized and keeping your space, your environment clean. There are ways of keeping your studies and your papers and all the things that you have to have for school in an organized and tidy way. And so I try to help students learn some of these basic foundational skills before they even get to college. And then what we do is, as the syllabi start coming in, then we start setting up the schedule and getting the routines all sorted out, so they can get on a good schedule in advance. When are they going to be exercising? We don't want to eliminate that, of course. Making sure that they know how to feed themselves properly, so that they're eating the best they possibly can for maximum productivity, so their brain is working at peak capacity, because this is when you want it to be doing that. And all the things that they will need to be able to do, whether they're at home going to college or living somewhere else and going to college, they should still have all those skills in place. Because by this point, most parents would kind of like their student child to be a little more independent, and
trending that way, right?
Yeah, that would be the goal. So this is something that I try to get students to be able to do for themselves, regardless of where they're attending college. Because most will eventually, even if they're going to a city college, which I think is it's actually sometimes a really, really great idea for many students, because they can get a lot of the GEs under their belt and be done, and before they go off into a 4-year college. And so it's a financial savings for one, and it also can sometimes be a much easier transition. So
Yeah, I'll bet you're probably still at home in those situations, and you're probably got a lot more support, and you're getting acclimated to the college life and all the transitional things that happen.
right.
So when you are focusing on your upper division courses, they're
Mhm.
you're in sync.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that maybe workload can be a challenge, because I'm thinking of high school, and you got 6 classes, right? And full-time students sometimes will take on 6 classes, thinking that it's probably about the same amount of work, right? Do you?
They're usually not allowed to.
Oh,
There's a limit.
there
Yeah,
is.
most of the colleges they have a limit as to how many units you can carry. And it depends upon whether it's a quarter or a semester term, and it also depends on their major and what they're going to be taking. But that advisors will keep them from doing that.
Got it. So I guess my question was, is workload a challenge, or is does the system iron that out?
The system, I think, for most of the students that I've worked with and the schools that I've been involved with,
Mhm.
they pretty much have that worked out. Matter of fact, the system usually shuts down after a certain number of registered classes. They can't even register for more than 3 classes in a quarter, for example. They have to get special accommodation or permission in order to override the system. So it's sometimes set up. What's also kind of neat is for students who are in the disability department.
Mhm.
I hate to use the disability word because I don't consider it a disability, but I know it's a challenge. Is that once they're registered in that system, they actually get priority registration for classes, which is really, really helpful, because this way the students get to choose the time of the class that they will want to take. So if sleep is an issue. We all know that. Sleep is an issue. You either have a problem going to sleep, waking up, or both.
Mhm.
And if the student has a really, really difficult time getting to an early class, and
Mhm.
they have priority registration and they can take that class at 11 instead of 8,
Right.
this is a good thing. So, they want to be able to get those classes that they really need and want, because they also want to make sure that they're in the class that's going to be the best for them to be able to get to. And that's, oh my gosh, I don't want to forget to say this. This is so crucial. Don't skip classes. If you can do one thing, every one of my students who has skipped classes has had nothing but problems. And as soon as we get that to stop,
Mhm.
it's a game changer. Seriously, skipping classes it first of all, it messes up your schedule. Your structure that you set up is no longer there, but you're missing so much information. Even if the class may not be the best and it's kind of boring or whatever, I have tricks to make it a little bit easier for people with ADHD who get bored easy and their focus starts to wane. But there's so much to be received from attending the class. Sometimes the professor will actually give you tips and hints on what's going to be on the upcoming test. You
Right.
also get to hear what the professor feels is valid and important because they're talking about it. If they're talking about it, that's generally something they feel is important enough to put on a test. So you need to hear this. Plus, if you're taking notes on all this, then you've got information, you've got something to work with. If you miss a class, it can really, really mess you up, and even more so in a quarter system, because again, everything's compacted. It goes so darn quickly. You want to make sure not to miss. You don't want to miss anything. But you want to give yourself the best possible chance as a student in college to succeed.
Mhm.
And if you skip classes and you're late on assignments and you don't take care of yourself and you're skipping sleep, it's going to be really hard.
I had classes where the instructor gave us the answers. He said, everything I'm going to tell you in class is going to be on the test. So
Yeah.
just take good notes. And there were classes I didn't buy the textbook for. That's how much the notes were, how important the notes were, and how important it was to attend versus reading the textbook. Now,
Exactly.
I wouldn't recommend not reading the textbook, but
Yeah.
in the class is the point.
And I even tell students, read the material that's for the class
Uh-huh.
before the actual class, so that when the teacher is talking about it, you're familiar with it. You know the vocabulary. You understand some of the concepts at least a bit, and that way your note taking will be way easier.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be far superior when you've read the material and you know what's coming up. And that's what the weekends are great for. Pre-read, pre-read. It's not a mystery. It's all on the syllabus. You know everything you need to do for the whole term, which for some students can be a little overwhelming. So I help them break it down, because they're like, oh my gosh, I have to read all this and do all this. And I have a student right now I've been working with her for about a year, and plan is she will be graduating in May. So this is very exciting. But she knows she also has a learning disability. So reading for her is painfully slow, and she doesn't always read accurately, so it's really difficult for her. So she has to give an inordinate amount of time to reading her books, and it's something that's very difficult for her. So she has to plan so far ahead to be able to do the reading. But when she does, then the lectures make more sense and she can take much better notes. So it makes a huge difference. And for some students in some colleges, there's a note-taking service, which all students have access to, but they pay for. If you're signed up with the disability offices, then generally one of the accommodations is you actually have access to the notes for free.
Wow, that's great.
So that's a cool thing to know.
These are great tips. So one other thing I don't want to forget to ask you is about working in college and free time and stuff.
Good question.
What happens with work? Because you must have some college students that you work with that work also.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Are there any special challenges there?
Yes, there are. There are special challenges there. I actually do a whole webinar workshop for a bunch of incoming students through an organization, and many of those students are actually having to support themselves, so they have to work, and it's hard because they're juggling college and a job, and there's a lot there. So I work with students who are on both ends, those that need to work and those that don't have to.
Right.
And if a student cannot work for their first year, it's probably a better idea because of all these new changes, all these transitions, and then they can add a job into that mix in the summer, and then keep it maybe going, into the next term. But by not having this, by not having a job, they have the opportunity to really focus on school. And bottom line, from me as a coach and also as a parent and speaking to other parents, a lot of money is being put into this education. That should be the focus. That's the goal here. We wanted to have successful students. That's their, it's kind of like that old joke, you got one job. Do that well. You want to make sure that that the student has every opportunity to have complete success. And by adding a job into the mix, sometimes that can actually take away from the time that they may need. And I feel that until a student has really gotten their schedule together and everything's working well for them, and they're doing well, they're succeeding, and they got the game of life figured out, and they're taking care of themselves, they're eating, they're exercising, they're sleeping well, they're doing their classes, everything's going well, then you can add a job into it. But again, that needs to be a small percentage of the time. So I usually tell students, 10, 12 hour a week job, that's about it. And, it's got to be something that is easy to schedule and that accommodates college students, because finals week, midterm week, no working. So they've got to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to work these weeks, and the job, the supervisor or owner of the business has to be able to say, yeah, we're good. I understand you're a student. So it's got to be a job that actually is accommodating for a college student. And most of the ones that students get, they make that known ahead of time. So yeah.
Perfect. So we're going to run out of time, but I want to run something by you first because I think
Okay.
this is important. So what can high school students do to prepare for success in college, particularly students with
Yeah.
ADHD?
Well, I think the best thing that a student can do in the high school year is understand what they're going to need to know in college so that they understand the differences and what the challenges might be, and prepare for them in the summer. I actually speak to high school seniors, all, the whole class, not just those with ADHD. Of course, for those with ADHD, they really need to heed some of this advice. But if they can get to the point where their study habits are really good, that they are able to keep a schedule, keep a calendar, and manage their lives, learn how to budget, learn these skills, learn these life skills over the summer while they can get that information from their parents. Learn how to do laundry. Oh my gosh, my mother never taught me how to do laundry before I went to college. I ruined everything I owned, my first year. I had to go buy all new clothes. I'm like, oh, that doesn't go in a hot dryer. Okay. And some people, don't learn those things because it's been done for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I really advocate for students to learn everything they can to be independent. Be as independent as they possibly can over the summer before college, so that when they get to college, those skills are already in place. Then they're golden.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing. So, so thank you so much for this information. If our viewers have, if you have any kids that are going into school or high school, or going into college, I should say, from high school, you're going to want to make sure that you reach out to Juli. She's got a gift that she's going to give you. What are you going to give today to our viewers, Juli?
So I'm offering a 30-minute free consultation session with me, and there'll be a link so that the students are able to, or anyone actually, you don't have to just be a student. I work with all ages, all the way up to late 70s. So you can go in and schedule a time on my calendar that will work for you, and we'll have an introductory session.
That's fantastic. And if you're an entrepreneur or you need help with organizing or efficiency, Juli is the person you're going to want to see. She's an expert in those areas and highly qualified, been doing it for at least 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah,
So,
add zeros to those.
Yeah, zero, right, exactly. Thank you so much for being on our program today. This has been a big help, especially for those who have kids going into college. Good to have your eyes open in this process, because you don't want to have any breakdowns, especially this early on. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on our program. Make sure you sign up for Juli's free gift. Get that consultation. It'll be definitely a game changer for you. And thank you for watching this edition of the ADHD Toolbox.